I'm Laura.
And we are
Two Paper Girls. We're back with another Top 5 Wednesday. Sorry for not doing the last couple, but they weren't really ones we could think of good answers for, so we thought there's no point doing them for the sake of them. But this one is Top 5 Books to Read by the Fire, which we thought was a really cute topic.
My top 5 isn't exactly what you would call a good Christmas recommendation list. It's more like books that you'd feel comfortable, happy, exciting reads to read by the fire, like kind of more fantasy based is my list. So coming in at number 5 is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. Obviously not the most festive or happy book, but this book is it's set in the cold and there's a lot of snow. And I just like the idea of reading like a large chunky historical and fiction book by the fire. I just like that idea. It feels quite cosy, even though I think it's because it contrasts really nicely with being inside by the fire to like it being so horrible. But this is why it's at number 5, because it's not for everyone at Christmas.
My number 5 choice is The Hobbit, again with Amy, like the kind of fantasy feeling. When it's all cold and horrible outside and you're all snuggled up, you just want to read about like misty mountains and crazy fantasy worlds is always what I'm in the mood for at winter. And The Hobbit is a nice one because it's nice and small, so you could probably read it by the fire in a few days and it'd just be all cosy to read about all the dragons and Bilbo and stuff.
My number 4 is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, because I can see a theme of fire coming up here. This would just be a really fun book to read by the fire in your nice house with the TV on, like listening to some music, reading a book when you know that it'd be banned in the world of Fahrenheit 451. And it's just really cute, it'd be nice and warm. Reading that book actually makes you hot.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre, but it's such a good book and I'm kind of feeling like I want to reread it this Christmas.
My number 4 choice is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, because even though it's quite a chunky classic, it's really quick to get through, but something about it is just kind of like cold and wintry. When I see it, I just think of like being all snuggled up in the cold, and I suppose it's because there's a lot of kind of cold, wintry imagery throughout the book, like in the orphanage place she's in the school, it's like really cold and rainy all the time, and it's just a bit depressing. But I also think it'd be quite cute to read like a romance by the fire, but not a really summery kind of like Anna and the French Kiss kind of romance.
My number 3 is The Time Traveller's Wife by Audrey Nickenegger. We just had to Google that and I was like, that's a name, that is. I haven't read this book, but I really want to read it, and no spoilers, but at the end it's very snowy. I just really like this book. The film. And I want to read the book at Christmas. I think it'd be a really good Christmassy read, a good book to get all snuggled down with. And like Laura said, it's nice to read about like a romance and like a book that's full of love, but without like a soppy romance, like teenage YA side to it.
My number 3 choice is obviously Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, because it just makes me, I don't know, I can read this book in winter or summer and I think it fits both times, partly because Neverland like has its all cold wintry bit and its summery bit, and it's all got the kind of magical fantasy that you want at Christmas, and it's like a children's story, which obviously at Christmas I think I always look back to like children's stories, and well, I still think I'm a child, but when I was a really little child I'm really excited for Christmas and Santa and stuff, so it makes you feel like a kid again, and it's also so small you could probably read it in one sitting by the fire, and I think it's a really cute book.
My number 2 is following along from Laura's theme of like childhood throwback books. It is The Folk of the Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton. My mum gave me this book and she was like, oh, you'll like it. And I was like, oh, but it's so old. And it was written really old fashioned, but I read it and I really loved it. It's just so easy to imagine. They go to all these lands and you just fall in love with the characters. I just remember really liking it as a kid. And it's just really cute to read by the fire. It's really tiny, so you'll be able to read it really quickly. And it's just like a really old book that I think is just still relevant today.
My number 2 choice is Let It Snow by John Green, Laura Miracle and Maureen Johnson, because it's just 3 Christmas stories and they're all really good in their different ways. John Green's I think is my favourite. Surprise, surprise. But I read this book quite a few Christmases in a row. I don't think I'll reread it this year because I think I read it last year. But it's just, there's loads of individual stories you could read like one at a time, or you could read the whole book and they all interlink, and obviously it's a proper snowy Christmassy read. It's the only book which is actually Christmas related on this list.
My number 1 is Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I just really like these books, and in winter they just seem to be there because obviously with the fantasy like we were talking about, and these are just magical books. I mean, The Hobbit I enjoyed, but I read it as a kid and I didn't really like fantasy as a kid. I was just more of a general children's books kind of person. And now, like, I'm older and I love fantasy, and I've read Lord of the Rings pretty recently in the past year, and it's just a really good, like, probably epic fantasy. And if you're sitting by the fire and you've got nothing else to do, it's like a good book to concentrate on, because you kind of need to concentrate on it. But that's why it's at my number one, because it's the most fantastical book.
My number one choice is kind of obvious, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Specifically that one though, because it's got the mixture of everything we've talked about. It has like the Christmassy chapter in the middle, which is nice, but it's also kiddie and throwback to childhood, as well as being fantasy, as well as being short. It's just literally everything else in my list all combined into one. Makes me feel like a child, and the first book you can just read really quickly, and it's got that more like kiddie tone to it, which is nicer than the bigger later books, because they can get a bit serious. And this one's just nice and fluffy, and it's really cute, especially if any of you get the illustrated Harry Potter for Christmas. Reading that by the fire would be amazing, like with all the pictures and everything. So yeah, that's my number one.
Those are our top 5 lists of books that we want to read by the fire this Christmas and this winter season. Let us know down below if there are any books that you want to read or good recommendations for us.
And we'll see you on the next video.
Bye!